Hi, I'm USA Today bestselling author Jennifer Youngblood. Thanks for joining me for one chapter a day, the clean romance way. Today, I'm going to be reading Chapter 9 of Her Crazy Rich Fake Fiancé. Wyatt and Haven are off in search of Lillian's ring. Will they find it? Here we go, Chapter 9. Wyatt looked down at the map and then at the partially frozen stream in front of them. When he and Bryn struck out on this madcap scavenger hunt, Wyatt wondered if Lillian's hand-drawn map would even lead anywhere. Surprisingly, the directions were clear and concise. He looked at Bryn. She pulled her coat tighter around her thin frame and shivered. Wyatt also suppressed a shiver. It was frigid enough to make an Eskimo cold. He grinned, thinking how his face would probably freeze this way. Well, you wanted an old-fashioned Christmas. We may not be looking for Christmas trees, but our hands and feet are certainly turning to blocks of ice. Warm laughter bubbled from Bryn. Wyatt felt like he'd been graced with a ray of sunlight. He pointed to the large oak tree. That has to be the one Lillian mentioned. Yes, the stream widens, just as she said. Wyatt surveyed the primitive landscape. The brown leaves on the ground were encrusted with a thick layer of snow. I can't imagine Lillian coming out here on her own. Me either. No way could she have made it. He stilled his shoulders, folding the map and placing it in his pocket. All right, let's do this thing so we can get back to the SUV where it's warm. Good idea, Bryn agreed through chattering teeth. Otherwise, we'll turn into popsicles. Wyatt turned on the metal detector and spanned it across the ground. Bryn stepped up beside him, both sets of eyes combing the area. It's a good thing we have the metal detector, otherwise we'd never find anything underneath the leaves and snow, Bryn said. You're right. He drew in a measured breath. I'm sure the ring is long gone. I know. Poor Lillian. Poor us, Wyatt sniffed. We're the foolish saps out in the cold searching for a ring lost years ago. Bryn chuckled. Well, look at the bright side. We will have done our good deed for the Christmas holidays. Lillian seems like a nice person. I'm glad we could help her. Yeah, she seems nice, but a little off. I agree. There's something strange about this whole situation. She laughed. Did you ever think when we left New York that we'd be tromping through the frozen wilderness and searching for some poor woman's ring using a metal detector? Oh, don't forget our freak show room. Come on, she chuckled. You know you want to redecorate your place the same way. He snorted. Not hardly. The metal detector wasn't picking up a thing. Wyatt figured they'd give it another 5 minutes and call it good. He kept going around the perimeter of the tree. When he got to the back section near the stream, the thing went wild. Wyatt's curiosity piqued. All right, we've got something. Yeah, from the sound of it, we found a whole truckload of rings. Wyatt squatted down and brushed away the leaves. He placed the detector over the ground where it buzzed loudly. X marks the spot, he joked. He looked around, searching for a stick to use for digging. Bryn seemed to read his mind as she walked a few paces and grabbed one. Here, she said, handing it to him. Why, thank you, ma'am, he quipped. Do you think it's Lillian's ring? Bryn asked doubtfully. Nope, I don't. It's probably a metal can. He began digging. 2 inches deep, he felt something hard. There's something here, he announced. Bryn crouched next to him. Careful, he warned. I don't want you toppling backwards into the stream. You just don't want to have to fish me out, she teased. Yes, he said with a deadpan expression, for my sake and yours. She shoved him lightly, causing him to lose his balance. Wyatt fell sideways. Hey, he protested, catching himself with his hand. Don't push me in. Sorry, she said sheepishly. Wyatt righted himself and continued digging. Growing impatient, he removed his gloves and handed them to Bryn. Will you hold these? She looked mortified. Your hands will freeze. Nah, I'll be all right. I'm a Southern boy, remember? I live for playing in the cold, wet dirt. Okay, she laughed. Never knew any of that had to do with being Southern, but if you say so. Rather than squatting, he knelt. Ah, you're getting serious now, Bryn chuckled. The faster we find out what's under here, the sooner we can leave. Wyatt used his hands to push aside the dirt. The cold seeped into his fingers, making them ache. A few minutes later, he had uncovered a metal box about 1 foot long and 6 inches wide. He pulled it out. Bryn's eyes rounded. That looks like an expensive box. Wyatt examined the heavy-duty metal box. Bryn was right. It did look expensive. The latch was tarnished silver. He flipped it and opened the box. Bryn gasped, and Wyatt did a double take. The box was filled with jewelry. several strands of black and white pearls, sapphire and ruby earrings, a handful of diamond necklaces and bracelets. Do you think they're real? Bryn whispered in awe. I'm no jewelry expert, but they look real to me. This was crazy. They'd come here to help a lady find her ring and found this instead. Do you think Lillian sent us here to find this? Bryn asked in a low tone. I don't know. He spotted something at the bottom of the box. It was a folded sheet of paper. Wyatt and Bryn got to their feet. Wyatt pulled out the paper and opened it. If found, please call 212-555-4678. Bryn's perplexed expression mirrored Wyatt's own feelings. Should we call the number? Bryn asked wide-eyed. Concern seeped into her eyes, turning them so dark they were nearly black. Do you think the jewelry is stolen? Maybe we should take it to the police. We don't want to get involved in something criminal. Good point, Wyatt mused, trying to decide the best course of action. He thought of something else. The map Lillian had given them. Here, hold this. He handed Bryn the box and reached in his pocket. He unfolded the map and compared it to the note from the box. His pulse increased. It's the same handwriting. And the same number, Bryn pointed out. Lillian sent us here to find this box. Wyatt nodded, trying to make sense of what was happening. Why would Lillian send them here? Should we call her? Bryn asked. Yeah, but after we get to the SUV. Wyatt could no longer feel his hands. He glanced around. For the first time since they'd come out here, he felt vulnerable. No telling how much the jewelry was worth. It could make them a target. Once they got in the SUV, Wyatt started the engine and blasted the heater. They'd placed the box on the floorboard at Bryn's feet. Your poor hands, Bryn lamented. Wyatt looked down. His hands were numb and beet red, his nails covered with dirt. He wiped them off as best as he could, but they'd have to stop where he could clean them with soap and water. He held his hands up to the heater, but it hadn't warmed up yet. The blasting cold air made it worse. Here, let me help. Before he could protest, Bryn took his hands in hers and brought them to her lips, slowly blowing. The warmth from her seeped into his fingers, and feeling returned to his fingertips. Wyatt was touched by her gesture, and it was dang attractive. Now your hands are dirty, he noted. No biggie, in my line of work, I'm used to dirty hands. Huh? He shook his head dubiously. What do you mean? Color crept into her cheeks. Was it Wyatt's imagination, or had Bryn suddenly become nervous? Never mind, she shrugged. It was a bad joke. He didn't get it. Any other time he might have questioned her more, but his mind was on the box of jewelry and what to do about it. Once his fingers were warm and functional, Bryn released his hands. Wyatt backed up and pulled onto the road. A few seconds later, Bryn spoke. Should we call the number and see if Lillian answers? She shook her head. I don't know why Lillian didn't just tell us about the box instead of pretending to have lost her ring. Me either. Both of us thought she was strange, though. Yes, Bryn frowned. Now she seems even stranger. She pulled her phone out of her purse and pressed in the number. Put it on speakers so we can both hear it. After the third ring, a professional-sounding voice answered. Hello? Hello, Bryn answered. Is this Lillian? No, it is not, the woman replied briskly. Bryn shot Wyatt an exasperated look. Is Lillian there? We found something that belongs to her. There was a momentary pause. Can you describe what you found, for the record? The woman added when Bryn remained silent. Should I tell her? Bryn whispered, moving the phone away from her mouth. Yeah, I'm sure the woman already knows. We found a box filled with jewelry, Bryn said into the phone. Fantastic, the woman said with gusto. Wyatt tightened his hold on the steering wheel. This was getting stranger by the minute. Is Lillian there? Bryn pressed, her voice laced with irritation. Here are your instructions. Do you have a pen? You'll need to write down this address. Bryn huffed out a breath. We just want to speak to Lillian, she grumbled. All in good time, the woman said patiently. Are you ready for the address? Bryn retrieved a pen from her purse and held out her hand. I'm ready. She began scribbling on her palm. I don't have any paper, she explained to Wyatt. He grinned, nodding. We'll be waiting for you when you arrive, the woman said in a crisp, impersonal tone, like a corporate training video giving instructions. Congratulations, she said, a smidgen of warmth entering her voice. Lillian has been waiting many years for this day. Waiting? I don't understand. What do you mean? Bryn asked, but the woman disconnected the call. Bryn shook her head in disbelief. What do you make of that? Wyatt laughed under his breath. I'm not sure. It sounds like Lillian set us up, though. For what? He shrugged. I guess that's yet to be determined. He pulled over to the side of the road and put the address into the Range Rover's GPS. A second later, they were on their way. Do you think it's safe to go to this place? We'll drive that way and see what we think. If we get a bad vibe about it, we'll call the police. He glanced at Bryn. Does that sound okay to you? She nodded, biting her lower lip. Then she chuckled humorlessly. I don't know whether to celebrate finding the box or to be worried. Bryn's comment was spot on. That's precisely how Wyatt was feeling. He sighed heavily. I guess we should have known we were in for an interesting run when we spent the night at the inn rather than a run-of-the-mill hotel. Whose grand idea was that anyway? He asked dryly. It's been great. A smile tugged at Bryn's lips. Even the freak show room. She tilted her head. This may be great too. I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out. Yeah, Wyatt agreed. 10 minutes later, they were back in the town of Remember. They looked at each other in surprise when they realized the address had led them back to the Magnolia Blossom Inn. This is insane, Bryn laughed. No sooner had they pulled into the driveway than a convoy of vans drove in behind them. What the heck? Wyatt looked in the rearview mirror. Who are these people? He muttered, his patience with Lillian's antics wearing thin. Bryn's face tightened as she looked back over her shoulder. The doors of the vans flew open as reporters sprang out carrying microphones. News reporters? Bryn asked, her eyes radiating concern. Hard-faced, Wyatt stepped out of the SUV. He came around and opened Bryn's door. She got out holding the box. The reporters surrounded them. A chipper brunette with short, no-nonsense hair shoved a microphone in their faces. How does it feel to know that you found the Lillian Yates treasure? Wyatt and Bryn just looked at each other, dumbfounded. Where did you find it? Another reporter asked. Wyatt straightened to his full height, glaring at the reporters. We don't know anything about a treasure. We were helping Lillian find her ring and found this instead. He motioned to the box as oohs and ahs rippled through the group. The treasure has a reported value of over $450,000. Would you mind opening the box so that we can see the contents? The reporter asked eagerly. Wyatt's mind began to spin like a beach ball caught in a hurricane. $450,000? Lillian Yates led them right to the box. The question was, why? He glanced at Bryn, whose face had gone ashen. Rapid-fire clicks sounded around them as the reporters snapped pictures. Seeing Wyatt and Bryn's confusion, the short-haired brunette launched into a full explanation. When her husband Howard died of a heart attack, billionaire Lillian Yates took the jewelry Howard had given her and put it into a box. She buried it in an unknown location somewhere in the southeast and has been posting vague clues on a blog site. People have been searching in vain for the treasure over the past 10 years. The reporter flashed a cheerful smile. Lillian claims to have buried the treasure in memory of her husband. Understanding registered on Bryn's face as she turned to Wyatt. The town's name. Remember, Wyatt mused. Does Lillian Yates own the town of Remember? He asked the reporter. She nodded. Yes, she does, including this inn. Wyatt draped an arm around Bryn and pulled her closer to whisper in her ear. Lillian wanted us to find her treasure near the anniversary of when she and Howard first met. He bunched his brows. I wonder why she picked us. Bryn's eyes softened around the edges. Because she thinks we're in love. Wyatt felt the familiar zing as their gazes locked. Love was a definite possibility. A goofy grin stretched over his mouth. Well, this is an interesting turn of events. A smile curved Bryn's lips. Yes. What are you going to do with the treasure? A reporter asked. That's all it took for them to get bombarded with questions. Where did you find the treasure? Did Lillian Yates tell you where to look? What are your names? Wyatt went cold. Crap. His full name would become public. He wasn't necessarily worried about Bryn hearing it. Just hours from now, they'd arrive at his parents' house and she'd know everything. He felt Bryn tense beside him. Concern washed over him when he saw her distraught expression. What's wrong? She offered a tight smile. Nothing. It's just a lot to take in. Your names, please, the brunette pressed. It went through Wyatt's mind that he should give them the name he went by professionally. Then again, the reporters would sniff out the truth. I'm Charles Wyatt Black, Davenport, he added. This is Bryn Lockwood. A murmur ran through the crowd. Wyatt looked at Bryn, whose face was carved with concern. She was probably wondering why he'd tacked on Davenport. Maybe she even recognized the name. A hot shame filled Wyatt. He had not wanted Bryn to find out this way. He had wanted to break it to her gently when they were alone, explain why he kept his real identity on the down low. Too late for that. Are you the Charles Davenport, son of the real estate and medical supply tycoon? Bryn gave him a questioning look, to which he only shook his head. He held up his hand, his tone firm. No further questions. How many times had he seen his dad do this very thing? Wyatt made a practice of staying out of the limelight. It was easy to do so in New York. He winced inwardly. Well, it might not be so easy from here on out, once this story broke. He was sure Lillian Yates meant well, but she wasn't Wyatt's favorite person right now. Her kind gesture was going to cause Wyatt a truckload of problems. Smile for the camera. You're about to be the most famous couple in America, an attractive woman standing in the middle of the group shouted. Bryn shot him a terrified look. I don't think this is a good idea, she protested. Too late for that, Wyatt said, pulling her close and plastering a large smile over his lips. Being the social butterfly you are, I'm surprised that you're acting camera shy, he said under his breath. This is different. She arched an eyebrow, cutting her eyes at him. Charles Wyatt Davenport? I promise I'll explain everything, he assured her. He placed his hand on the small of Bryn's back as they turned and walked toward the inn. The reporters followed them like yappy dogs, nipping at their heels and throwing out more questions which they ignored. When Wyatt and Bryn stepped inside the inn, they found Sam behind the front desk, a gargantuan smile on his face. Congratulations, he beamed. No reporters allowed inside the inn, Sam said, his jaw clenching as he eyed the cluster of people who had come in behind Wyatt and Bryn. After a moment of grumbling, the reporters left through the door, slamming it shut behind them. Wyatt and Bryn stepped up to the counter. Where's Lillian? Wyatt demanded. She had to leave for Connecticut, but she asked me to congratulate you. Sam grinned. And to tell you that from the moment she saw you, she knew that you were the ones who were supposed to find the treasure. How kind of her, Wyatt said tonelessly. Bryn held out the box. She'll want this back. Sam shook his head, holding up a hand of refusal. No, the jewelry is yours to keep. How about the metal detector? Wyatt asked dryly. You can keep that too, Sam chuckled. Wyatt turned to Bryn. Well, should we get on the road? Sounds good to me. Sam peered out the front windows. If I were you, I'd hang out here for a few more minutes until that pack of wolves disperses. Otherwise, they might tail you all the way to Atlanta. Wyatt made a face. Well, how did you know that we're headed to Atlanta? Lillian told me. He leaned forward, his elbow resting on the top of the counter, his tone conspiratorial. By the way, I don't know if you've thought of this yet, but had you not gone the extra mile to help Lillian, you never would have found the treasure. No deed goes unpunished, Wyatt rattled out, and then felt a little guilty when Sam's jaw went slack. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a spoilsport, but this stunt's going to cause me a lot of trouble. Bryn frowned. Care to explain that comment? Yeah. He motioned to the sitting area. Wow and double wow. Wyatt and Haven never expected this. I'm sure Haven is freaking out. Wyatt's secret has been revealed in a totally unexpected way. Okay, his last name is Davenport. That kind of puts a new spin on things. What do you think of Lillian's treasure? I'm sure she thought she was doing a good deed by leading Wyatt and Haven to it. Of course, she never could have imagined that it would cause them all sorts of trouble. What is this going to do to Haven? Ooh, she'll be thrown into the limelight. As Bryn, that's not going to go well. Will Bryn get word of it from Ireland? Wyatt and Haven are in a pickle. Join me tomorrow as I read the next chapter. Here's to keeping it sweet and swoony. See y'all tomorrow.